Hi, people of Earth, LGBT, uh, these straight arrows, too. Um, it's February 26th, 2023, and I gotta be pretty real with what I'm saying today. Today's a 1 year anniversary from when I found out I was sadly and drastically mistaken about somebody I'd had an acquaintance. I don't even know what to call her anymore, but it really put me in a tailspin, and I'm not out of it yet from 1 year ago. And that's something. I'm glad I'm making myself go to church, though, and stay involved with the choir, because that's my only solace at this point. My children just are gone from my life, and it's a weird thing, because I always remember the year of my divorce when my children were taken away from me, and a couple other like really difficult moments. But in any given year, there are also anniversaries of miraculous moments too for me, like November 16th of '93, when I was like on the verge, right on the precipice of being homeless. And that's the year of my divorce too. And I was just like, out of nowhere, all this shit's thrown at me that I just didn't understand, but realized I had no time to figure out how I'm going to cope with it. No time. I mean, talk about my back being against the wall. Good grief, man! I didn't have a place to live, and suddenly I go from being in and having my own family to being a complete loner, and my children taken away from me. And so that was so what happened there was I just thought the world was going to crash and burn September, when I didn't have any place to live, and I found a temporary place to live that was not compatible. And temporary places to live typically are not compatible ever, especially if you're renting a room in somebody else's house, man. That just never worked. Never worked. I never seen it work, put it that way. I've observed it, and then I've been involved in it briefly. And, well, actually a couple times. I rented a room. I rented part of a room once. Didn't work. Doesn't work, especially if somebody else's place, if you're not like going into a new place with a person or another 2 or 3 people. That's different than showing up at the door and renting a room. And I won't go into the details, but it was just insane. And so like this is the end of '93, and then I decided to keep at it. I had a hard time functioning that year, just normal day-to-day functioning, but somehow I hung in there, and by the end of the year I was coming around, to being on my own, standing on my own 2 feet, and then, but I didn't have a place to live, and I'm renting a room, and because I won't go into what I don't even call him a landlord, the homeowner started like just freaking on me, man. Like no matter what I did, and I realized, and then, I called him to the mat. This is like less than a week or 2 after I moved in there. He's turning the heat down and charging me extra for heating oil, but he's turning the heat down. Okay, so that's just one thing. But anyway, so the end of the month, October of '93, I had just an amazing month that month too. I had a therapist and a psychologist, was a guy, and I would tell any guy that's out there, any dude that's heterosexual, I would say, don't bother with a female therapist, because it's no good. A guy therapist, you have to have a male therapist when you're going through this kind of stuff, only because I think they can better understand the male ego, the hang-ups, the difficulties, the ridiculous power trips that guys can go on or whatever. For me, I found this therapist, and he was just great. The effect of what he did, and he pretty much defined what I was going through, which was helpful. But he also helped me remember that I was a professional at my chosen career and profession. And that is a significant factor for anybody, but especially for me. And that I had the biggest wedding of my life that month. There was 25 people in the wedding party down in South Philadelphia. And it was October 23rd, 1993. Now, does anybody, I know there's a guy at church, in the church that I go to, his name is EB. We call him EB, letter E, letter B. Anyway, he runs a lot of stuff at the church, and he's on the council. But he is like a walking encyclopedia of Philadelphia sports history. Really something. And I'm gonna ask him next time I see him. I'm gonna say, do you remember October 23rd, 1993? Because that was the day of this wedding, the biggest wedding of my life. And going into it, I was concerned about my performance being affected by the problems in my personal life. And the therapist kind of laughed, put down his pencil. He says, "Oh, that's an easy one. You just have to answer a question honestly to yourself." I said, "One question?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "And that's it?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "What's the question?" He says, "Are you a professional?" Now, if you look that word up in the dictionary, it'll say a person that's compensated for a task. In terms of a career and a profession that you believe in and that you have dedicated yourself to, it's much more than that. You are on a high level of performance if you are truly a professional in your career of choice. And he asked me that question, and I had to stop to think about it. I started like looking up at the ceiling or something, thinking, and all these videotapes of all these crazy obstacles went through my head. And I looked back at him finally, I said, "I can tell you without question, I'm definitely a professional." And he goes, "Oh, well, you're not going to have a problem then." And I said, "Well, how do you figure?" He says, "Because when you are truly a professional in your career path, then when you go on to the job and you're doing the work, you will automatically push all those personal things out of the way." And I knew he was right. I actually already knew that, but with all the crap that I went through in my divorce, oh God, I guess maybe I just lost sight of that truth. And I know it was true. And after about 30 seconds of thinking about it in silence, I looked at him and I said, "Yeah, I'm definitely a professional. I can tell you." And he goes, "Well, then everything's going to be all right." And he was right. And for the first time in a year, during that year, man, I'd been unstable. It was like I just thought I thought the ground literally was going to disappear from underneath me. I was going to fall into some huge hole or crevice or something I could not recover from. I just kept on believing that until that day. And when I stood up to walk out of his office, for the first time in like 10 months, I felt solid, really good balance, standing on my legs. And I'd lost a lot of weight. I was like at 155 or 160 pounds, something like that. And weak, but that gave me strength. Did a great job on the wedding. And then the same day was the day that Mitch Williams threw the gopher ball to Joe Carter for the Blue Jays' victory in that World Series. Mitch Williams, my God, and Jim Fergus. Oh, jeez, you leave a guy. How do you even give your ace relief pitcher? They call him the ace relief pitcher. How do you even give him the opportunity to go 0-3 in the World Series? After he's 0-2, you're like, okay, we got to try just pivot on something here. But Fergus didn't think that way. Anyway, big day, and then a week later, I get an eviction notice, and I have to look for a place to live. And on November 16th, 1993, I came across this phone number on the road on the way to the library to look through the classified ads to find a place to live. There was a street sign or a house for rent sign on the corner of Ship Road and Route 30, which is a major intersection on the way to the library. And I looked at it and I thought, I'm not going to write the phone number down because I can't afford to rent a house. And then I pulled through, and then I pulled over. I thought, I haven't found anything else. I've been looking for a place for a couple of weeks, and I haven't been able to find anything. I thought, I'll just write down the number. So I got out of the car, wrote it down, went to the library, called it, and long story short, I ended up getting a house. Not an apartment, not a room, not a townhouse, a house, separate, by itself, without, like, the closest other residential building was like at least 300 feet, at least a football field, maybe a football field and a half away from me, for $600 a month in Exton, Pennsylvania. Unbelievable. And the rent never went up. How is that? That is a miracle in my book. Anyway, so that was one moment. What was the other one? Okay, yeah, the basketball game with the boys, the 15-year-old boys. That was another one. That was, let's see, November, December, January, February, March, April. That was like 5 months later. But then a really significant miracle was 1997. And I walked out of the job at UPS because of age discrimination. But more than that, I was just sick of working there. My life, my career was going nowhere. My business was going nowhere. I didn't realize it at the moment. There was the beginning of the end of my dependence on photography. And then, let's see, so I'm working 2 full-time minimum wage, no benefits jobs. And I get a couple of breaks, and I get a career with Bell Atlantic, where instead of minimum wage, I'm making $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year. I'd call that a miracle. And people say, well, how you don't really know it's a miracle. And I said, well, then if you're not going to call it a miracle, you have to term it as amazing and incredible coincidence and a series of things that happen. Same thing with getting the house. There was a series of things, and I'm not going to give you all the details, but there was at least, I don't know, 6, 7 things that were so coincidental and necessary to the outcome that I don't know. You know, one of the things about faith is that, you know, sometimes you just have to have a leap of faith. But I, you know, went back and traced everything that happened, and in my head, and I was like, man, how could so many things fall into place to end up with a miracle for me? Well, God, you know, that's God's mercy and grace. I know. There's plenty of arguments against that. Plenty. But for me, it was incredible. Today we sang a song, I Want to Walk with Jesus, and I'll tell you what, it brought me to tears, because a year ago today, I got this information about this other person, and it was a dagger to my chest, or to my back, more explicitly, to my back. A dagger in my back. Figuratively speaking, obviously, because I'm here talking to you. But, you know, that's when you get hit and hurt like that. I don't know. Maybe it's different for women. I think it is. But guys, man, guys have a hard time walking away. And at 71 years old, where am I walking to, you know? I hope I'm walking to prosperity. We'll see. Live long and prosper. These beautiful children, this family that sit in front of me at church, and the kids always turn around at the sign of peace, and they give me the Vulcan sign, live long and prosper. And we do it every time. And today I gave them a little flying saucer toy that I bought for everybody for Christmas 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. And I hope they have a good time with it. And got to know a little bit better the father and the mother. And it turns out, you know, I told the father this flying saucer is a really cool thing. Flies inside the house. It's like a toy. And I said, well, you know, the reason I got this, I've been a pilot a good part of my life, and I'm fascinated with anything that can fly. And this thing can fly around your house, and it's a plastic toy. It's not going to hurt anything. And he goes, oh, well. My father was a pilot. My grandfather was a pilot. My cousin flies for American Airlines. And this guy owned an airplane. He owned half of an airplane, which is pretty amazing. So anyway, I found out, you know, more about some people that were sitting close to me in church, and that's always good. So anyway, there you go. I want Jesus to walk with me when my heart is almost breaking, when I'm hanging my head in sorrow, and all along this pilgrim's journey, I want Jesus to walk with me, and I hope he is. I have a hard time finishing that song because I just break into tears, and that's difficult, you know. It's insane. Not insane. Insane's wrong. Well, what happened to me was insane. From this other person was absolutely unexpected and completely insane, and it hurts even though it happened a long time ago. I was reminded of it by some things that she wrote about it that I found a year ago that just threw me into a cauldron of conflagration of hate and contempt. And I'm trying to move past it, and it's really, really difficult. Really difficult. It's so crazy, the feelings that wrong move. Man. It's hard to reflect on something where you know you made the wrong move. The wrong move was to let her hang around. The right move was to end it right then and there, but I didn't. So now I gotta live with that. Peace.